Hello and welcome back here to another edition of World Talks, where every word matters. I'm Diana Skaya. NATO's foreign ministers opened 2 days of talks in Brussels Tuesday, with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha also attending the summit. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte emphasized the importance of continuing to strongly back Ukraine. Now, for the latest developments from the summit, I'm joined by Veronika Poniscjakova, Deputy Director, Portsmouth Military Education Team. Good morning, Veronika. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning on World Talks.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with, this is day 2 where the NATO Foreign Ministers Summit is taking place in Brussels. Of course, the ongoing war in Ukraine is at the forefront of this summit. What are the main goals that are taking center stage during these 2 days of talks? If you can just walk us through them.
So the talks will revolve around Ukraine, as expected, and NATO's continued support for Ukraine over the next, couple of years, or as long as it takes for Ukraine to retake its territory back from Russia. And also, we can expect more talks about increased cooperation in several areas, like, for example, intelligence sharing. What the meeting is not going to be about, however, is guaranteeing Ukraine's acceptance into alliance anytime soon, even though that is what they are hoping for.
We know that Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha is attending the summit. Now, in a letter to his NATO counterparts ahead of the meeting, he said that an invitation to the alliance would remove one of Russia's main arguments for waging its war, namely preventing Ukraine from joining the bloc. What is your comment on this? What's your take on that?
I'm not really sure about or how viable this premise is, because it's not going to prevent Russia from continuing the war in Ukraine. If anything, it would expand it and would get everyone in NATO involved as well. NATO has a long-standing policy of not letting any states that have territorial disputes to join the alliance, because that would automatically trigger Article 5 and would make everyone in the alliance join the war effort. So they're not going to do that.
Now, if we look at the case of, NATO chief, right, General Mark Rutte, he really emphasized the importance, of course, of continuing strong support for Ukraine. How do you think NATO is actually going to balance this support with its own strategic priorities? And if you could just name us what you think those are.
Continued support for Ukraine ties directly into strategic objectives of NATO, because NATO's main objective is to provide security and stability across the region and not let its members get involved in a conflict. If Ukraine falls, then what we can expect is Russia just trying to expand its sphere of influence and also potentially invading other countries, like, for example, the Baltic states. So,
do you see that as a realistic scenario?
I think it could happen, but again, that is only under the if Ukraine falls. Hopefully, Ukraine will not fall. But if Ukraine does fall, I don't think there is anything stopping Russia from using the same kind of rationale as they used to invade Ukraine, to use it in the Baltic states as well. Again, pretending that there's some kind of genocide of ethnic Russians within the Baltic states.
Veronika, what do we know about the Budapest Memorandum? This is something that Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski did mention here. What can you tell us about this?
I would start by saying that in hindsight, now we know that it did not work out for Ukraine. They did give up their nuclear arsenal, that were nuclear weapons that were stored on Ukraine territory as when they were part of the Soviet Union. In exchange for giving up their nuclear arsenal, they were given security guarantees by some big powers, including, Russia. And of course, we do now know that Russia, whilst in theory they were supposed to provide security guarantees to Ukraine, they invaded Ukraine themselves. So obviously that did not work out at all.
And so you would say that this, of course, shows disappointment on Ukraine's behalf. But now, what kind of military assistance is Ukraine expecting from NATO at this summit? I mean, is there a potential for advanced systems like more fighter jets, air defense systems? What do we know about this?
No details. We don't know any details at this point, but we do know that different member states of NATO have pledged more support in the past couple of days. I think here we could highlight Germany or the United States. They're going to supply lots of arms, lots of equipment to Ukraine worth nearly 700 million euros. So it is a significant package. I think what we can see here is that the Biden administration, they are trying to pump as much stuff into Ukraine as they can before they are replaced by the Trump administration. I mean,
before we get into that U.S. part and the package for Biden, I just want to ask you this. I mean, Ukraine has, of course, long aspired to NATO membership, but now there definitely is reluctance from some member states. Do you see any shift in NATO's stance on Ukraine's eventual accession, especially during the context of this war? I mean, is this something that could be discussed or that is being discussed at the summit?
NATO has been pretty consistent, I would say, in the past couple of years, even though Ukraine has been quite disappointed about their stance. I would start by highlighting the NATO summit back in 2023. That's when NATO said for the first time quite openly that Ukraine was going to become a member of the alliance. It was a matter of when rather than if, which was reiterated this year at the NATO summit once again. And this is something that we are going to hear once again at this meeting as well. The former Secretary-General Stoltenberg, as well as the current one, Rutte, they both have said that Ukraine's place is in NATO. It is just a matter of when. Once the war is over, Ukraine can expect to be admitted into the alliance.
Veronika, I mean, the fact that Andrii Sybiha is there for those talks, I mean, there must be also some concerns. I mean, aside from the message that he's trying to portray, what are the key concerns for Ukraine's foreign ministry as they're engaging in these high-level talks with NATO?
I think from their perspective, they're becoming quite frustrated. They did say that they do expect that invitation to NATO right away, but this is not going to be given anytime soon, much to Ukraine's disappointment. So that is their main priority and their main worry at the same time.
What is the role of NATO in terms of bolstering Ukraine's long-term security, both military and politically?
Politically, I think we have seen continued support, whether in terms of, diplomatic support, but also in terms of pledges into the future and also provision of different military equipment. So again, this is very likely to continue for a very long time, as long as Ukraine needs it. But in terms of actually fighting on Ukraine's territory or providing troops or personnel, we are not going to see that. That is something that NATO can only really realistically do on their own territory, but not on Ukraine's territory.
What about, how should NATO respond, of course, to Russia's violations of NATO airspace? What can you tell us on that?
Russia has been doing that for a long time. It has been happening for the past couple of years, and all these confrontations have been resolved fairly peacefully, I would say. Russian aircraft, they violate Allied airspace, and then usually what happens is that Allied aircraft escort Russian aircraft back to their territory, and it's been quite frequent. It happens all the time.
Veronika, I mean, earlier on you mentioned, of course, the U.S. Aid package. And of course, Biden did announce a new one right before. I mean, he has such little time left in office, like you mentioned. What does the aid package signify in terms of American support for Ukraine, now particularly with 2 months left for Biden's administration? And how is it going to influence the situation, given, of course, the political uncertainties as to when Trump is going to take over in January?
Biden, I would say that he's really trying to retain his legacy as one of the main supporters of Ukraine. So this can be also seen through this latest package. And I would say, yeah, this support for Ukraine has been pretty consistent in the past couple of years and throughout the, entire Biden administration. As to what happens after Trump takes over, it is to be seen. On one hand, Trump, during his campaign, has been quite open when it came to Ukraine, saying that Ukraine should not be expecting any more support. At the same time, I would say we have to distinguish between Trump whilst on the campaign trail versus Trump in office. So I think we shall see.
Thank you so much, Veronika Poniscjakova, Deputy Director, Portsmouth Military Education Team, for breaking it down for us here this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. Up next, news with Claudia Czerwinska. Stay tuned.